The meeting of the Waco City Council on December 7th, 2021 to order at 3:02 p.m. I invite you to join me for a moment of silence as we remember the life and legacy of our former council member, Noah Jackson. Noah graduated from A.J. Moore High School in 1953, attended Paul Quinn College, and served in the Air Force during the Korean War. He served on the Waco City Council District 1 seat from June 20th, 2017 to May 15th, 2018. He will be missed deeply throughout his community, and we ask for prayers for his family during this time. And just on a personal note, I think me and several of my co-council members who served with him or just knew him from community work are going to deeply miss him and know that his legacy will live on, his good work in this community will live on for years to come. And we're going to miss our friend and continue to keep his family in our thoughts and prayers. So join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted one 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. Mandy, is there anyone present who would like to speak on a work session agenda item? If not, then we will recess the regular session and convene the work session with a report from our city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council and public. We have no changes to the agenda this afternoon, so I'll move right into organizational updates, and I have the privilege today of introducing two new leaders in our organization to the community. The first is Dr. Mukesh Kumar. I'm pleased to introduce to you Waco's new MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization Director, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. He started in his role just a couple weeks ago, or actually last week, I believe. He's a city planner and most recently held the position of Associate Professor for Urban and Regional Planning at Jackson State University. He also served as the City of Jackson's Director of Planning and Development from 2017 to 2019, where he oversaw all functions related to city planning, economic development, housing, and public transportation. He's actually kind of a cool guy. His research has been funded and supported by the National Science Foundation, Federal Highway Administration, Greater New Orleans Chamber of Commerce, Lincoln Institute of Public Policy, and throughout his tenure at Jackson State, he routinely consulted with municipalities on issues related to transportation and development. Mukesh, we're so glad to have you here working for the MPO, and welcome to Waco.
Waco, you're entering into a role that is incredibly important as we are seeing incredible growth. Wearing our long-term goggles is critical, and I know based on what I've heard about you, you're going to do an excellent job in serving this community well. So welcome to Waco.
All right, our second introduction I wanted to make today, organizational update-wise, is introducing you to our new Communications and Marketing Director, Monica Settlemeyer. Monica, please join us. She officially starts in her role next week, I believe, but she has recently relocated with her family here to Waco in the last few days. Y'all be thinking of her. It hasn't been as smooth as maybe she would have liked from a moving standpoint, but we're glad to have you here today with us. She's here because we have so much related to communications on the agenda today, so appreciate her getting an early start. Monica joins us from Sioux Center, Iowa, where she most recently worked as Chief Marketing and Quality Officer for a healthcare system. She was responsible for development and execution of marketing and communications and programming and services across their organization. She also developed cross-channel communication strategies and applied data and research to ensure excellence in the organization. Monica and her family are no strangers to Texas. This is kind of their second time around, I believe. She previously worked for the Houston Independent School District with communications and project management and Strategic Planning, as well as Rice University, where she managed and oversaw the development of a professional leadership training program. So fun fact, if she was back in Iowa today, the low was going to be in the high teens. So welcome to Texas. It's a little warmer, and but y'all give a warm welcome to Monica.
Welcome. This is a subject that this council cares so deeply about, and I think our whole city does, and your community does. And so we're very excited to have someone who can communicate the good work that this organization is doing and the opportunity for our public to engage. So welcome to Waco. Enjoy this good weather. I think it gets to be 85 in a couple days, so it'll be hot, and then it gets cold again. So that'll be Texas for you, but we're glad you're here.
Sorry, I was communicating with our city attorney. Next up, employee recognition. And as the community knows, and we've all seen, over the last few days, downtown Waco has transitioned into a winter wonderland. We saw more than 25,000 folks gather downtown to enjoy the festivities that included fireworks and community band, a parade, snow hill, all sorts of fun activities. I just wanted to say, there, looky there, yeah. Quorum of the council there, it looks like 1, 2, 3. I wanted to say a special thanks to all the city employees who worked and or volunteered at the event, and particularly to our outstanding Parks Department, who really leads out in this event. It takes more than 60 Parks and Rec team members to make this memorable weekend happen. It also takes traffic crews and police officers, and this year we had special support from the fire department and solid waste, who brought their holiday-themed vehicles out. And we also had more than 100 student volunteers from Midway High and University High, as well as the Waco Youth Council. It really takes a team effort. And I just want to issue a special thanks to Megan Davis, who's in the audience. Wave to us, Megan. Yeah, thank you. She's great. She's awesome, and she had Jessica Maxwell, who helped her really spearhead this event. And I also owe Megan a public apology. Megan, I'm very sorry. At the last council meeting, I did say that the holiday fire truck was the best thing we do all year. And I make no secret that I love the holiday fire truck from Fire. But I also really just appreciate the work that she has put into this event each year and producing just a fabulous weekend for all of Waco. So thanks, Megan and Jessica. On the review of the business session, we have no informal reports today, but we're making up for that with 9 public hearings. It's quite a busy one. The first one will be our first public hearing in the creation of TERS number 4, and you'll hear more about that in a few minutes during the work session. Our second public hearing is for an ordinance related to redistricting, and then public hearings 3 through 9. Clint Peters, our Director of Development Services, will cover later in the work session as well. For resolutions, I'm going to highlight 3 on the agenda today. The first is Resolution 2021-881, and it's a resolution approving the purchase of 193 sets of bunker gear for an amount not to exceed $500,444. And I want you to kind of visualize for a minute. I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever sat beside a campfire and then days later went to wash your clothes and still could smell the smoke? You ever done that? Well, then you're somewhat prepared for this agenda item and why it's such a good idea. You know, each firefighter that we have is issued 1 set of bunker gear to use on fires. And they come back to the station and have to clean and decontaminate that set of bunker gear. Well, what happens if you have a second fire during your shift? And so this expenditure allows for each firefighter to have a second set of bunker gear so that they don't put on a contaminated or dirty, smoke-filled set of bunker gear. This action does follow up on your previous investments as a council to add fire extractors, which are basically large washing machines to stations around the city. And I'm just real excited to put the item forth to the council because it shows we're directly engaged to help reduce the risk of cancers in our firefighters. And it really shows that we value and invest in our employees. The second highlight I wanted to have today is Resolution 886, which authorizes an advance funding agreement with the state of Texas for the MKT East Rails to Trails project, which provides up to $2.3 million of federal funding to support the project, and we have $577,000 as match as well. We are, the city is responsible for any cost overruns or non-reimbursable items as well. A map of the MKT trail hopefully will pop up on the screen here in a moment. The area we're talking about is shown in orange between the two green highlights there. Pretty excited about this one. We'll start at Waco Drive and end at Golson Road. This project's been diligently worked on for a number of years, and we're real excited to be able to access the state grant funding. Construction on the first phase on this map will start in spring of 2023, and as a moment of kind of braggery on, which is not a word, but I made it up, a braggery on our city public works team. I will note the city of Waco was the only small urban community in the state of Texas to receive 2 grant awards in this cycle. And so just real pleased that we're accessing alternative funding to really make these projects a reality. And we'll continue to work on the remaining pieces to complete the trail over the next few years.
I'm so glad to see this highlighted, and of course, and as proud as you are of our Public Works Department for keeping an eagle eye out on opportunities, not being afraid to go ahead and commit. Mayor oftentimes refers to us as the smallest member of the varsity team. I think we're kind of getting middle ground here. I mean, you know, because we're doing the things that we set out to do and want to do to make whole communities. We talk about our economic development advancement of the community and all the companies and organizations that are coming in to build. But what we do have and always had are our people. So what we're trying to diligently do is find a way to keep them connected, one, work on their wellness. I see our health district director here, and you know, her walks are something that will happen on this trail. You know, walking with our people who are helping us figure out how to be and remain healthy and well. And so without the opportunity, and it's going to take us all to fulfill it. Yeah, Public Works got the money for it, but Parks is going to have to maintain it. And, you know, policing and fire, everybody's going to have to be a part of this. But because the end goal is good, strong Wacoans, I think that's something that we're absolutely eager and ready to do. So, you know, bravo to everybody that's involved in this. And this is just another opportunity for Waco to be fantastic and fabulous and whole. So thank you.
Yeah, Holmes over here. I'll echo Councilmember Barefield on that. When we think on council of infrastructure needs in the city, a lot of it goes to roads and streets and that kind of thing. And these two, not just 887 but 886, are trails, multimodal trails, foot trails, and sidewalks, which is also in great need in our city. And these are not tiny projects either, about $2 million each. And again, I'll go back to congratulating you. I think this was the number 3 and the number 8 project submitted in the grant program. So Waco was right up there, and we need these. I will say that on 886, the Cedar Ridge sidewalks, half of that is in District 5. The south side of the street is District 5. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure we start the south side of the street, of the sidewalk before the north side, before it hundreds, if we can, get that.
Yeah. We'll do two groundbreakings.
Okay, we'll see. That's right.
One for both.
Congratulations for getting all this done. I think it's great to see this in our budget.
Good, thank you. The final highlight I have for you today is Resolution 887, which approves a professional services and engineering contract with BGE for a street reconstruction project on Bagby Avenue from Kendrick Avenue to 24th Street. And I think a map will pop up now. It's quite a long stretch of roadway. It's about 4 miles of road. The amount to not exceed is $757,000, and the action today includes an intent to reimburse those expenses once we issue future debt. So the general fund cash will be repaid. Like I said, it is 4 miles of roadway reconstruction that we're talking about, and that 4 miles has seen more than 130 work orders over the last few years. So we're spending a lot of time trying to fill potholes and fill cracks and deal with issues on this stretch of roadway. Staff anticipates the design and engineering work will take much of 2022 and will be ready for construction as early as 2023, hopefully to be completed by the summer of 2024. Now, anytime you see a engineering contract that's $750,000, I know what you're already thinking, which is this is going to be an expensive reconstruction project, and it is. We currently estimate the total cost of this project at about $8.5 million. So we'll be working in the future capital improvement program budgets to ensure we can get this constructed and funded in the coming years.
Thank you for that, Bradley. I was going to bring this up. Obviously, it's in my district, but since we were talking about 886, I was going to say, well, we have something similar in 887 in South Waco, but I want to thank y'all for this. Also, when we're doing this work between Irving Lee and I'm trying to see, Richter, the telephone poles look like they're going to fall down. So I don't know if we need to talk to the utilities company about when we're working on that road to see if we can't fix those telephone poles that don't look like they're going to fall down any minute now.
Okay.
So I was just going to bring that up, but thank you staff for considering a resolution for this area, which is in need, has been in need. A lot of our streets are in need, but this is a street well-traveled. So thank you, staff.
Thanks, Councilmember.
And Holmes, there, I'll echo Councilmember Rodriguez also that the 4-mile stretch, and this, I think this was all the pavement condition index was poor on the whole thing. I know that we've been trying to fix up some of the medium, and they're a little bit less expensive to work on, and trying to get those all in shape. I know the PCI, the pavement condition index, is a high priority for the council to get from, I think we're right around 50 now, maybe under 50, getting up to 70 in that range. And taking this big of a section of what measures out as a poor, I think is a big undertaking, and obviously needed, right? I mean, because this is
Right.
a main thoroughfare. You can see it's a giant 4 miles. So I applaud us, working around all the different streets in town. Eventually, we're coming to you, your neighborhood soon on this, and this is a very important stretch for the city. So great. That number is huge, $8.5 million. The 750,000, I remind people, is just for the engineering, just for the survey. So more to come on this, and a very ambitious timeline. Sounds like 2023. Not that far off. Anyway, great. I'm very supportive of this.
That street also, if I may say something, Bradley, a lot of people use that street to get to HEB. So that's why there's a lot of traffic on that particular road from New Road all the way down Bagby. So it's not just going to benefit South Waco, but it's going to benefit just about everybody in Waco that goes to HEB and uses that road.
That's a good point.
That is one of the busiest HEBs in their whole system. So you're absolutely right, Councilmember. We do have 4 ordinances on the agenda today, and each is a second reading. So if there's not further questions, that concludes my report.
I just wanted to say, really appreciate both in city management and city staff, the kind of good humor and good cheer expressed in our programming and in our services. I think we all enjoyed Waco Wonderland, and that was well executed, and the fire trucks that are coming through all the neighborhoods lit up. But I've got to give kudos to Solid Waste for the Grinch Mobile. I think there's a certain level of creativity there too that people enjoy. It's not quite delving into the Oscar the Grouch stereotypes, but I think we're safe in the Grinch sphere.
That's right. That's right.
Chuck Dowdell out there, yeah, he's responsible for that.
We got a great team for sure.
The consent agenda includes resolutions 2021-870 through 2021-892. Are there any items council would like to remove from the consent agenda? If not, then the consent agenda will include resolution 2021-870 through 2021-892. The next item on the agenda are the work session items, items 2021-870 through 892. Bradley, would you please introduce the first work session?
All right, thanks, Mayor. First one is Clint Peters, our Director of Development Services, is going to be covering the discussion of planning public hearing items. Clint?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. We do have 7 public hearings, planning public hearings this evening. The first 2 are dealing with subdivision plats. I'm gonna go over them together because one of the first public hearing, 863, is actually a variance request for one of our plats. So the first one is the final plat and construction plans of Precision International Edition, lots 11 and 12, block 1. This is a commercial subdivision of a single lot that's at the corner of Franklin Avenue and Valley Mills Drive. There's an old restaurant at that corner, has been recently torn down, and the owner of this property wants to split it into 2 for 2 commercial out parcels for the movie theater there. One would be about 1.4 acres and the other about 1.2 acres. With that subdivision, it's cutting off sewer to the corner lot, so there is a sewer extension required for this plat, and you see that easement there, and that's why it's a major plat coming to council, so they will be extending a sewer line with that construction part of the plat. Plan Commission did recommend approval of this one. And then the other plat is the Bauman Edition, Lot 1, Block 1. This is a single-family residential plat off of Lakeshore Drive in the Steinbeck Bend area. It's actually off Old Steinbeck Bend. This is an area that does not have, it's located within the city limits, but does not have sewer service. And so they are platting this to build a single-family residence on a 5.5 acre lot, but it doesn't have sewer, so our ordinance requires that the sewer be extended to the property. In this case, the closest sewer line is about 3,500 feet to that property, which is a pretty long extension just for one home. It's also, you can see the Brazos River there, so the grade is going down, so they would have to do some sort of lift station to get the sewer out of there. And so they are requesting a variance to that sewer line extension requirement in order to build the house with a septic system. This is, we have treated other properties in a similar situation the same in this area. You can see some homes scattered along Old Steinbeck Bend that are on long or large acreage that utilize the septic systems. And so staff and Plan Commission both recommended approval of this variance with 2 conditions. One, if they further subdivide this, they would be required to extend the sewer at that time. And 2, that they have to meet all the septic system requirements of the McLennan County Waco Health Department. You can see the plat here. And then on the subdivision plat, Plan Commission also recommended approval of that with that variance for the extension. The next public hearing is a continuance from our last meeting. This is regarding the drive-through for the Starbucks restaurant at the corner of I-35 and 18th Street. If you remember last meeting, we did have a residence that lives on the property that backs up to this, voice some concerns about sight lines and traffic and impacts on that property. So we've worked not only with the applicant over the last couple of weeks, but also the neighbors to see if we could mitigate those concerns, and want to show you what we've come up with. Just for a refresher, this is commercially zoned property, C2 zoning, so the restaurant portion is a permitted use along with the drive-through. Really all they're needing the special permit for is for the drive-through for the restaurant. Then here's the site here, a picture here on this. This is corner lot right here. And so here's what we come up with on the revised plan. We'll kind of go through this. If you remember, they were planning on putting an 8-foot privacy fence along the rear property lines there with a landscape hedge there. We had their landscape architect look at a planting that would grow quick to accomplish that hedging. You can see an example of this. So they are putting some wax myrtle plants in there that grow about up to 5 feet per year. So you'll have this hedge formation here within two growing cycles, again, to provide that buffer between the homes. The other item was the sight triangle when cars are exiting this driveway here onto 19th Street, making sure this is safe. And you can see the way the driveway curves here. That was done so that the sight triangle, which is an area that is 30 feet back from the intersection and 30 feet over, is clear of any obstructions of no more in height than 33 feet. So you can't have any vertical signs or landscaping or buildings within that sight triangle. And that allows motorists to be sitting at this intersection and see 200 feet either way for oncoming traffic or pedestrians, bicyclists, whatever. And that sight triangle puts that sight line through both the Bagby Avenue intersection as well as the I-35 intersection. The other new additions that we worked through with the applicant and neighbor is they are going to add sidewalk. There was a requirement to put sidewalk along 19th in front of their property, but they've agreed to extend the sidewalk all the way down to the Bagby Avenue right away, again, to provide a safe path for pedestrians through there, to get through that driveway safely. And then also they agreed to extend the fencing down this property line of that adjacent neighbor. And so I'll show you some pictures of what that looks like now, but there'll be a privacy fence added along this neighbor's property as well. So here's the picture of the 19th Street that we're talking about. This is actually there's an existing house that is part of the property that they're planning to tear down. So this is actually looking right into the commercial property where the driveway will be installed. This is back up towards I-35. And then this is the neighboring fence, and right now it's a chain link fence. So this is where the sidewalk and the new fence would be installed down to Bagby Avenue. And then this is the gentleman that came and spoke about the Concerns Home, which is on the corner of that 19th and Bagby intersection. So we were able to work with the neighbor. He did relay to the applicants that with these modifications of their plans that he's now in favor of the request and plans to come and speak in favor of the request tonight, is what we've been told by the applicant. Some of the other additional information they provided since last meeting, these are the elevations of the Starbucks. You can see here, and then here's a rendering of how it would look from that 19th Street intersection. So you can see the 8-foot fence here along the back of the property lines with that shrubbery there. This would be the initial height installed, but that would grow up into that hedge that we saw on the site plan. And then you can see the low profile here. It's just a one-story building. And then here's an example of an existing one they've built. I believe this is up in the Metroplex. And you can see it's kind of a similar situation where it's in a area that's got residential around it. So this is similar to what they build. This is what it looks like at night. That was the other concern about lighting. And they did provide a photometric plan. And so this is the pattern that the light would put out. You can see this is the back property line here. They will have a couple of parking lot lights, but you can see these little bubble areas of where the limits of where the light would spill out, and it stays completely on their property. And then you can see the building lights there that are all pointed downward. And so the light pollution doesn't come off their property. And with all that, Plan Commission recommended approval of this. And I feel like with everything we've done in the last couple of weeks, we've met all the concerns of the neighbors. And hopefully this will be a good project for everybody.
Clint, I'll just comment, the process really worked here, didn't it? I mean, good grief. Who was the gentleman that came to speak? Did an excellent job of articulating his position and the sight lines and the concerns. And I'm just impressed that staff brought the developer here and the community together to come up with a really positive solution here. Impressive, and I'll congratulate him tonight that he did something great for his neighborhood
Yep,
there.
for sure.
She did. Thank you, staff, thank you, Clint, for working with the neighbor and the applicant to get all these issues resolved in a good way. So thank you, staff, and the gentleman from Starbucks for working with our neighbors, because they're going to live there and they're not going anywhere, and we just need to get along.
Sure. All right, the next public hearing, 866, is a zoning request from Wagboo Properties, LLC. This is a property located at Webster and 11th Street, just south of downtown, for a zone change from industrial M2 and M3 to C4. This is about a 2.5 acre property. Part of the block is the old Diversified Product Development Building, and then a vacant lot at the corner of 11th and Webster. This is in our mixed-use core land use designation, which is our downtown land use, which is designed to have mixed-use urban scale development. And then you can see the brown on the map is the C4 zoning, which is our downtown zoning. And this area has been transitioning away from industrial to that downtown zoning over the past 10 years or so, maybe a little longer. And so this change is in line with that transition. Here's a picture of the building that's included in the property. You can see the Webster Avenue street project with the new streetscape, and you can see how this building's already set up with the urban form, built up to the property line, and with the new streetscape, it does have that urban form, which is in line with the C4 zoning. This is, again, looking towards, down Webster towards the river. You can see the silos in the background. So, as more C4 development happens along here, you'll have that urban scale along this roadway. And then you have the vacant lot that's next to Diversified that goes all the way to 11th Street as well. Plan Commission recommended this one for approval. We had no notices back on this one.
Clint, when I went by there to remind myself, 10th Street and 9th Street in Clay, I saw several homes being remodeled and, a lot of them being fixed up. So whenever we, again, like we did with Starbucks, whenever we have someone come into a neighborhood where there's people that have been living there for years, and I know a lot of them that have lived there for years, and some have passed, but still, I know the neighborhood. We need to be cognizant of the fact that they're not going anywhere and can't go anywhere, and whenever we approve or do or allow development to come in, we need to think about the neighborhoods just like we did with the Starbucks issue. So
Sure.
keeping that in mind, just reminding you about that. Because I live around these folks, so just a reminder.
Sure.
Thank you, Clint.
And one of the things we've done with recommendations for zoning is on the C4 zoning, where that transition is the recommendations for C4 have just been along Webster, where there are no residential on that front on Webster. And then you can see going back to Clay and that area, that's that pink. We have not recommended any commercial zoning back towards the neighborhood. So trying to keep that downtown zoning just along the Webster, where there's not as many residences.
Well, yes, but yes, and so I think the thing that Councilman Rodriguez may be saying is even with it being a commercial zone, it still fringes.
Sure.
And so those established neighborhoods and communities still have to deal and interact with that there is a commercial industry there, because there may have not been an active one for years or decades or whatever. So, I mean, I think that you all have been hearing us
Sure.
in our comments that we encourage any new development to happen with communities instead of to them. Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, you said it, I just was reiterating the point.
Thank
got
you,
it.
thank you.
So
You know, we have to live with our folks
Oh,
that
yeah.
we know.
Cause see, they gonna call us, they're not
Oh,
calling
yeah,
you.
they don't call you,
That's
they
right.
call us,
right.
or come knocking on our door.
Right.
The next public hearing, 867, is a 20-acre tract located in the new Cottonwood Creek development where you have the Topgolf, Cinemark, and Main Event. This is a request on that 20 acres to rezone from C2 to O2. This is all a mixed-use flex land use designation, and you can see that whole corridor through there where it either be Cottonwood Creek or the Thanksgiving Park addition or the shopping center here, Marketplace. There's a mix of C2 and O2. The differences between C2 and O2, both are mixed-use districts. The C2 is more geared towards commercial, does allow multifamily uses, where the O2 is more of a mixed residential and office district. But development pattern of this whole corridor has been a mix of both C2 and O2 development. And so they are requesting that this tract be rezoned to O2, which does allow a little bit more flexibility in residential product, a little higher density, and then different product types where you can go from anywhere from single family to multifamily, where C2 just allows multifamily. They are planning on leaving commercial zoning along the New Road frontage where the Creek View comes in, which is the main new arterial collector street through the development. And so here's the site, vacant site. This is the new street that goes through the subdivision. You can see the netting on the Topgolf, and this is the back of Cinemark and Main Event. And then this is looking back towards New Road, and you can see an apartment complex there. So just shows that it's a mix of commercial and more multifamily or higher density residential. Plan Commission did recommend approval of this one, and we did not have any notices sent back from the 13 notices that were mailed out.
Clint, I don't, there's not an issue here, but I remember in discussion and then further reading and research that the concept that they're bringing is, may not be relatively new, but I would like more information on it, the detached housing blocks that they're wanting to build here, because I think it's interesting. I don't know that where they would fit best in our city, but as we're in the middle of our housing study and looking at new ways to create more opportunities for housing and living in our community, if this is something, because I know it was in New York that they were, is that what we talked about? I'm looking at you, Bradley, I'm sorry.
They are growing across the country, yes.
Yeah, but
New York Times article, yeah.
So, right, in the Times article. And so it's something that, we need to make it brought to our attention, because if this is something that could be happening more over in our community, let us become fully educated in what these systems are like and what swaths of land they would need in order to be successful. So I don't know if that's a particular addendum to the housing study for more information, if it's a work session or whatever. But I would just like to a little bit more information on that if possible. Thank you.
All right, the next one, 868, is a zoning request, a land use designation and a zoning request for a 1 acre property south of LaSalle along 3rd Street in that area between Gurley and Garden along 3rd Street. You have University Parks over here and LaSalle to the north. There's an existing single-family home on the property, and they are requesting the rezone from R1B to R3B, which is a single-family zoning, to a multifamily zoning. This is the land use plan. You can see that yellow area is urban residential, which is a land use designated to encourage low-density development. This was put in place with the 2016 comprehensive plan adoption. You can see the orange area is more geared towards higher density development. This area has been transitioning to student housing, but the recommendation was to keep the higher density residential at Gurley, which is closer to the campus, and then once you got south of Gurley, it would stay more low density residential. 2016, when this plan was adopted, was also around the time that council adopted the College and University Neighborhoods District. And this area is in Zone 2 of that district, which again has the purpose of keeping that area lower density residential. So here's the zoning of that. There are some multifamily, those greens are multifamily zone properties. Those were done before that 2016 comprehensive plan was adopted. There have not been any multifamily zonings approved since the new plan was adopted. You can see these blue areas here are PUDs, and all these PUDs are single-family product. They're with a single-family density, and so those have been approved, but no multifamily zoning on the property. Here's the subject property here, and you can see, looking up and down the street, that it is still definitely this section of 3rd Street is still single-family residential dominated. And for those reasons, both staff and Plan Commission recommended disapproval on this one, both the land use change and the zoning change. We did get 28 notices mailed out. We did not get any response from those.
Thank you for explaining this, because I was going to ask why these particular people were. I read through this, and it still wasn't really comfortable, but with why it was disapproved. But after listening to you and looking through, I go down South 3rd Street a lot. I have family that lives on the other side of the loop right there on South 3rd Street. So I do travel that road a lot. It is transitioning to a lot of student housing. But I was just wondering why this particular was disapproved, but I approve of your disapproval. It's, you know, because it's, never mind, anyway.
Yeah, I just, you know, I'm not sure, you know, planning has a lot of a lot of challenges they face because we are growing and we're trying to do the things that we want to do to advance our city and advance our citizenship, but you have to look at it, and it may just not be time yet. Yeah. And I think that, you know, the student areas are the student areas, but where we are in this street, I mean, what you showed me and what is in this plan, I don't know necessarily that it's time yet.
That's kind of our thinking too, yeah. And that's actually one of our findings is that there's already an adequate supply of land that's already zoned that hadn't developed yet for multifamily, and to create more doesn't really make sense at this point. And then our last public hearing is on a bunch of different properties at the corner of Dutton and Valley Mills Drive. This is a City Waco applicant. This is associated with our boundary adjustment agreement that council approved a couple months back with Beverly Hills. There was some property in that agreement that transitioned from being inside the city limits of Beverly Hills to being in the city limits of Waco. But through that process, we didn't zone that property. And so, or at least this section right here, we didn't zone that property. So this request is from the city of Waco to zone that property that's now in the city limits of Waco. The majority of it is owned by the city of Waco. It's the part of the old Floyd Casey site. There are 2 privately owned properties right at the corner there. We are recommending a couple of different zoning designations on those properties. One being the area that's along the creek in the residential street of Willowbrook, for that to be designated as urban residential, and R1B zoning, which is consistent with the residential in that area. And then for the commercial properties that are right at the corner, we are recommending C2 zoning, which is again our dominant commercial zoning. And it's also the zoning of those properties when it was in Beverly Hills. They had it designated as C2. A little bit different between the 2 cities designations, but it's pretty consistent to what it was before. And then here's a picture of the commercial properties we're talking about that are privately owned. And then the third commercial property right here is owned by the city of Waco. So this would be your commercial zoning C2. And then where the old entry into the stadium and along the creek, this would all be zoned single family at this point. And Plan Commission recommend approval of these changes.
I agree with what y'all come up with. I was just going to remind you, across the street of Floyd Casey Stadium, at our last council retreat that I attended, I brought up the fact that we wanted a special park for special children and in their needs. How are we, I guess we could put it in the agenda. I could ask for item, I see Jennifer getting antsy. But just to remind y'all, that area across from the Floyd Casey Stadium, that we have reserved it for special needs children.
Councilmember, I'd be glad to put that down as a future agenda item, and I have every expectation you're going to be blown away by what the Parks team is putting together over there. That's all I'll say.
Uh-oh, look.
I saw Jennifer moving her. I said, oh, I'm doing it again to her. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we have that still in the back of our minds, that that was reserved by council for that particular reason. Thank you.
Thanks, Clint. Appreciate it.
I'll just add to Alice's comments there. I mean, I'm really excited about this Floyd Casey project too. You can't sit down yet, Clint. I don't think I have any questions of you, but no, more good comments, that's all. But yeah, it's primarily housing development, and I think all of us here are very viscerally aware that we have a housing shortage and we need to get some housing. So I think that's the primary impetus of this whole project, is to create some more housing in towards the core of the city.
Sure.
And we've been through a lot of hoops to get it this far. This was originally Baylor swap land project, and we did some just recently the Beverly Hills swap land project, or land swap project. Today we're doing land use designation, zoning designation, as Alice commented, park land goes on here. So there's been a lot of moving parts on getting it to where we are today, and it's not that easy when you're doing that many different kind of things. You have to go through a series of approvals. So, and it's been on the drawing board for a while, but it seems like it's coming together now, and we're getting all the moving parts lined up. I appreciate everything staff has done. I know we're working on a development agreement with the developer, and I hope to see that all come together here soon, and can't wait to see what the park looks like. I think this has everything going the right way on it, and I appreciate staff's efforts.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, on the zoning part of that, we anticipate you'll be seeing a rezoning of that whole site once the development comes through.
And
Great.
Clint, can we be real selective of the real estate developers that are going to go in and try and build our homes? Can the council be real selective on who we pick to, or am I saying something wrong? I see Jennifer.
So I just wanted to remind council that what's before council tonight is a zoning case on a smaller area of land, and I think we just need to focus on the zoning case because that's all that we're posted for.
Okay, so housing is not part of the zoning of this? Lord Casey.
So the case that's before us tonight is rezoning the city's property that city owns to single-family residential.
Okay.
We do anticipate in the future that there'll be another zoning request, a PUD, that will let the council look at the specific plans for how that develops.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
For city attorney on this, we've got essentially the Group A properties that the city staff is recommending go into urban residential land use designation and R1B zoning, and then Group B properties go into mixed use flex and C2 zoning. Is that one motion, or is that two motions, or what do we need for, seems like kind of a complex agenda item.
You are more than welcome to do it in one motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Clint.
All right. Our next work session is a discussion of establishing tax increment reinvestment zone number 4. I'm going to invite Kent George, our Director of Economic Development, as well as Nina Magan with Hawes, Hill and Associates to the table. Give a brief introduction, then turn it over to Kent. This is a big item. This is our first TIF or TERS creation in quite some time here in Waco, and it's, as the council is well familiar, we're strategically looking at creating a TERS that's in our aging, blighted commercial corridors and a few greenfield sites to support reinvestment in the core of Waco. And, you know, I think I liken this project to some of my favorite projects working in city government. Stop, Jennifer, laughing at me. And because we're planting an oak tree, right? We're planting an oak tree, and at first the tree doesn't seem like a big deal. It's real small, but as it grows and matures over decades, it will become a treasured asset. Now, as I look down the road for Waco, I think TIF 4 is going to really be one of those moments that's a heritage oak for our community and long appreciated. So with that, I'll let Kent George give us an intro, and looking forward to hearing his presentation.
I'll try to contain my excitement. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council. As reported to City Council in September, our economic development team has been working towards establishing a new tax increment reinvestment zone for the city. I had the pleasure to lead this historic project for the city of Waco with the goal of establishing tiers number 4. Our city has a successful history with tax increment finance projects, with one of the oldest zones in the state dating back to 1982. This new zone, like its predecessor, will provide our community with an incredible opportunity to plan and execute strategic economic development projects for decades to come. To assist with establishing this new tiers, we partnered with Hawes, Hill and Associates, and at this time I'd like to introduce you to Nina Magan with Hawes Hill. She will provide an overview of the proposed zone, which will include information about our goals, the preliminary project and financing plan, and next steps in creating this new zone for our growing city.
Thank you, Kent. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I'm Nina Magan, and I'm a principal with Hawes Hill and Associates. And over the past year, maybe year and a half, I've been working with Kent and city staff on creating this new reinvestment zone for this community. I know you all are familiar with reinvestment zones, as this would be the 4th one, but just on a high level, a reinvestment zone is an economic development tool used by a lot of communities throughout Texas very successfully. It's where you create a boundary, and within that defined boundary, you have a base year, and any increment or revenue generated above that base year goes to fund public infrastructure improvements within that zone. And the idea is to really redevelop areas that are in need of investment in redevelopment, underserved areas, underdeveloped areas that are, could be greenfield, that need infrastructure to spur development at a time sooner than what would happen just normally. And it allows the community to really get the type of development and quality of development that you would like to achieve and help achieve the visions and the goals of the community. So it's a great implementation tool. I always screw up the tag. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I apologize. Anytime you create a reinvestment zone, it's governed by Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code, and you have to create a preliminary project plan and reinvestment zone finance plan. And that plan really outlines what is the proposed boundary, what is the need for a reinvestment zone in the community, what are the goals, what are we trying to achieve, what projects would we like to fund, and most importantly, how are we going to fund those projects? Is there going to be revenues, and how are we going to pay for them? So I'm going to hit the highlights of that plan for you all because that's what we had to do to get to this creation process. That plan also calls for a feasibility analysis, which we included, and that really shows, is this feasible? Are we going to be able to generate revenues within this proposed boundary and be able to pay for some projects? At a high level, if approved this year, your base year will be 2021, and any increment or revenue above that will be deposited into a tax increment fund that will be used for projects within the zone. It's a 30-year zone. It'll terminate in 2051, and at that point, all revenues go back to the general fund. We know the general idea of a reinvestment zone is to fund public infrastructure in underserved areas or areas that are in need of redevelopment. But more specifically, when we were looking at Waco and trying to look at the goals and objectives that we were trying to accomplish here and what we were trying to set forth with, we looked at what type of sites would really benefit from a reinvestment zone and using this tool. What areas would really benefit and generate that increment that we could fund public projects. So we looked at older sites and underdeveloped sites that were not utilized. We know you've got vacant buildings and vacant sites or underutilized properties. We looked at corridors throughout the community that we know are in need of redevelopment and would benefit from that public infrastructure or transforming and uses over time. We also looked at some greenfield sites, as you'll see on the next map, that have been vacant or in ag and that would need infrastructure, whether it's water, sewer, drainage, roadways, to help fund and spur private investment. So we looked at all of that to come up with a plan and with a proposed boundary that would be useful for this reinvestment zone tool. At the end of the day, though, I want to point out this is an economic development tool, and it is a tool for you guys to implement your vision, your plan, and your goals for this community. It's one tool that can be used in combination with a bunch of others. So this is the zone boundary, the proposed zone boundary, and it is quite large. It's about 17.4 square miles. It's very diverse, as you can see, in terms of properties and types, as well as in location of these properties. It's non-contiguous. You've got properties north and south of downtown, and it includes a number of sites, but some of the key ones I just want to highlight is Floyd Casey, LaSalle Avenue, Franklin Avenue, 18th, 19th Street, again, redevelopment of these corridors. And you'll notice a lot of vacant, underdeveloped sites that are lacking public infrastructure or lacking infrastructure right now in development. One of the things I do want to point out is the residential requirement. A lot of people ask me, why do you kind of skirt areas, or why does the boundary look like that? And it's because we're skirting a lot of residential areas. Per Chapter 311 requirements, you cannot have more than 30% residential taxable value in your reinvestment zone at the time of creation. Once it's created, you can have as much residential as you want, but at the time of creation, you cannot have more than 30%. So that's why you'll see the carve-outs. There is residential included in here, but you'll see we mostly go along corridors to connect the areas together. And we've managed to keep it at about 25% for the city of Waco in this proposed boundary. I did mention that as part of this preliminary project plan and finance plan, we have to prepare a feasibility analysis, again, to really show that we will be able to generate revenues and increment from this proposed boundary over time. And there's a number of factors that we looked at. I'm just going to highlight a few. And in this case, you can see from the property classification map, you've got about 55% that lies in ag and vacant. So right there, that gives you plenty of opportunity. Many communities don't have that, but you've got a good amount of vacant land included in here to generate that new investment and generate revenues to support public projects. In addition to the vacant or greenfield properties, we also included a lot of areas that were developed, especially along the corridors that we were looking to redevelop. And we want to make sure that when we include those, that there's an opportunity for new investment for there as well. So a couple of the factors that we looked at was taxable value per acre. The total value in this reinvestment zone right now is about $616 million. But when you break that down per acre, you can see that a lot of the value lies in those lower categories, which provides that opportunity for new investment and growth to generate those revenues. Same thing with year in improvement. If everything was all brand new and green that was developed, we probably wouldn't want it included in the reinvestment zone because there's no point. You're not going to generate those values. But you've got a lot of older areas that are transforming in uses so that that are prime or will be prime for redevelopment. So at the end of this, we determined that the plan was feasible. You would definitely be able to generate revenues to support infrastructure projects. So one of the things that I really like about this tool, create reinvestment zones and using them as an economic development tool, is their flexibility. They're not only flexible in the types of projects that you can fund, but in how you fund them. And we like to maintain that flexibility when we're creating a project plan and finance plan for any city. We like to maintain that flexibility for council, the TIF board, and city staff. This is a long-range plan. It's 30 years. We're not going to know every project you're going to want to undertake in today. Priorities change, circumstances change. leveraging of fund opportunities or grant opportunities come and go. You might have a great project that you don't know about from a developer that comes next year. We won't know all of that today. So what we'd like to do is make these plans flexible. So instead of listing out specific projects, we listed out goals. And within each of these goals represents almost every type of project that you could possibly do with a reinvestment zone. And what that does is give you as council and the TIF board and staff that flexibility in deciding what those projects are. Most communities we work with will create a 5-year CIP based on those goals and based on the needs at that time, and they will update that CIP and bring it forth to council every year. So that really allows, again, for circumstances, when circumstances change, for you to modify those projects, when leveraging opportunities come up to, again, utilize the TERS to its fullest potential, and it really allows you to fully successfully implement the plan. So the 6 goals that we kind of included here, and this kind of was based on the vision of the community and working with staff, was infrastructure, detention, drainage, corridor and streetscapes, trails and connectivity, parks, open space and facilities, and economic development. I just want to talk a little bit about that last one, economic development, because most people are like, why do we include that in there when all of this is economic development? But basically, at reinvestment zone, you're supposed to fund public infrastructure improvements. But sometimes there's that case when you've got a great project and you don't have enough public infrastructure that you can fund, and you'd still like to invest in that project as a community. So Chapter 311 does give a reinvestment zone Chapter 380 powers where you can grant for economic development purposes, and that's how you can get around funding just public infrastructure. So with City Council approval, the TERS can do that. And so what you do have to do is include a program in your plan, which is why we include this goal. Not to say that you have to use it, but we wanted to give that option should you choose to do so in the future. Not surprising, the goals fall in line with these project costs. Again, instead of labeling or listing out very specific project costs, we wanted to give you buckets that you could draw on as based on a CIP or however you come up with these projects. So they fall in line, these categories fall in line with the goals, from infrastructure to trails, connectivity, parks and recreation. They're just buckets. They're also just estimates. Actual revenues and actual project costs will be based on the revenues that are actually generated in the reinvestment zone. These categories are flexible, they can move within. We've just kind of taken an initial attempt at generally how we see funds being spent percentage-wise. So that highlights the project plan components of the preliminary plan. The next component is the financing plan, is, all right, what do revenues look like in this reinvestment zone? What kind of projects can we fund? What will be available in revenue, and how can we do this? So we've got a current taxable value of $616 million, and when we go ahead and generate these revenue schedules, we're very conservative because we don't know what's going to happen, and we just want to see if it's feasible. We fully expect that you guys will outperform this, especially given the amount of greenfield land that you have. We haven't accounted for all those developments that could potentially occur. So the $616 million is current value. We've got a projected value of about $1.2 billion in the year 2051, and that gives you $625 million in increment. That was about an average of 2.4% growth rate. What does that translate into revenues over the life of the zone? It translates into about $87 million in revenues. You start to get $1 million a year coming in 2025, and that's due to the large size of the zone. You start to generate that revenue faster. The zone will terminate December 31st, 2051, so those revenues will go back to the general fund. In terms of how we generated those revenues and participation rates, the city would participate at 70%, and we're expecting the county and community college to also participate, which is great. You're already leveraging your funds and making those dollars go further. County at 70% is expected to participate, and the community college at 50%. What does that equate to in terms of the sources of revenue? City with the largest contributor at 59%, the county at 33%, and the college at 8%, and that's over the life of the zone. How do you fund projects with this? There's a number of ways. Again, that's the beauty of the reinvestment zone. You can choose to go as a pay-as-you-go. As you start to generate those revenues, you can pay for projects while leveraging with other funds like grants or other entities. You can also bond against your increment if you so choose, and you can also do developer reimbursements. That's a great way to kickstart a reinvestment zone if you don't have revenues, is to have a developer upfront those costs and reimburse them throughout the life of the zone or throughout a certain period of the zone. Most communities will choose to do a combination thereof, and again, it's flexible. As circumstances change and arise, you all can choose as a community and how you want to do that. So that sums up the revenue portion, the quick highlights. In terms of the creation process, this evening you'll be having the public hearing and the first reading. Followed by that on the 21st would be the second reading, and then that would actually be the creation of the zone. Not quite done there. In 2022, you'd have to appoint a TERS board, and they would have to approve what we call a final project plan and finance plan. The way we've set up your preliminary plan, it really falls right into the final. There may be a few tweaks, but that plan is really set up for you guys to go into a final project plan. It's all set and ready to go if there's no tweaks. So they would approve that, and they would recommend then council approval. Council would have to approve that plan as well in 2022, and once council has approved that plan, the reinvestment zone is officially created, and you're set to start to implement it. And I will take any questions.
Holmes here, I'll start out. Kent and Nina, thanks for the presentation, great presentation. I'm very supportive of this whole TERS concept, put a lot of work into it, and I like how strategic we've been about the areas that we're trying to include here, because it just, as I understand it, the purpose is to redevelop blighted areas, or the primary purpose, redevelop blighted areas, attract private investors, spur economic growth, and keep neighborhoods vital and healthy. I think, these areas are in, towards the core of the city and towards the exterior, or in places that haven't received the development, even in this time that we've seen a lot of folks moving into town. So this should accelerate the pace of development in these areas. And by accelerating the pace of development, we will establish a more robust tax base there, which I think is a great thing. We'll increase value in the real estate. And two things that I really want to make sure we point out, we're develop job growth in these areas and increase sales tax revenue. Because with job growth, you get people paying taxes, buying things, and buying property in the city. So I'm excited about this. Just what little research I've done on TERS, there is a but-for test, which I'm sure you're aware of, that we make the decision that but-for this kind of incentive program or this kind of zone set up, that there probably would not be this level of investment. And I think all these areas kind of meet that test, or they do meet the test. So I'm supportive of this. Just a couple of questions and comments. I just want to make sure that sales taxes generated in these areas is not dedicated to the zone. That does go back into general fund. Am I right?
Yes, this is not, this is only the property tax. This is not, sales tax has nothing to do with it.
Right,
Yeah.
right, okay, good. The second observation, because the other side of this story is that the areas of the city that are not in this zone perhaps pick up a disproportionate share of the general fund obligations. But I think that's mitigated by the fact that we're creating incentives to get in here into this zone, and projects that will have been initiated in this zone would have come out of the general anyway. So I think it's almost, you're going in a circle there. So I've satisfied my mind there. What I would like to see, and I think we talked to staff about seeing just a 5-year trailing, the total tax. I know we see some projections in the detail in the other part of this presentation, but a 5-year trailing on the total taxable value of this TERS property and the total tax generated that went to general fund, so we can kind of get a feel. I think it's intuitively it's a nominal amount, but if we can get if I can get my arms around the numbers there, that'd be great. And again, I'm supportive of it. I just want to see it before the second reading, if I could. And then I have written down here too, just the 70-30 aspect, I think is a nice little twist, because we're not taking the entire amount. We are still keeping the 30% coming back to the general fund. So I think we almost have the best of both worlds on this, where we are incentivizing development, creating jobs, creating more of a tax base in areas that have not seen that development yet, and for the benefit of the city and for the benefit of the entire tax base. So as I see here, I'm supportive of what we're talking about on the TERS. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you for the presentation, both Kent and Nina. I'm super excited about this for several reasons, but as Jim mentioned, in that but-for mentality, we've been without this type of opportunity for economic development and advancement for a large portion of these 17.4 miles for quite some time. And I'm thinking that I know that there's still going to be people to say, even though it's 17.4 square miles of a TERS, well, why didn't y'all look at this part? Or why haven't you considered this part? So one of the things that you mentioned, Nina, that I appreciate is the understanding about the residential boundaries and I don't know that that's as widely known.
Yeah.
Even people who interact with TERS or have dealt with, the artist formerly known as TIFF forever, I don't know that they understand that part. So that's incredibly helpful in our explanation as we walk with our communities about why certain areas aren't included in this particular TERS. That being said, this is but one of the tools in the toolbox. Because we've seen recently in economic development advancements that we've been able to step out of what is known as TIF 1 and do things to support businesses and development in our communities in creative ways that are not in the boundaries of the TIF. So I'm glad to see that and know that this is just but one of the tools in the box. I think that this has, I hate the word blight, but I think this is a tremendous opportunity to right some egregious wrongs in this community, as well as advance and enhance our green fields. Because I think that we've got some things that we can do that aid, again, in whole wellness and total wellness for our communities. And looking at this opportunity is good. I know it was risky. Anytime you talk about anything that's not just 5, 6 square miles, people get antsy. And I know maybe 1 or 2 people might have looked at Bradley like he was slightly insane. But I think this is a good, I mean, I've heard. But I think this is a good idea because it gives such a time as this. I don't know that we could do it incrementally. I think that this is the time and this is the season to just go for it, right? Now, God bless you, Monica. We're going to have to communicate this. So glad you're here. Welcome. But I think it's one of those things that we can do and will do together. So I appreciate all the effort that has been put into looking at this because, the grand ideas and plans that we have for this city and community can't happen just because we want it to. We have to be able to put the financial backing and opportunity for sustainability behind it. And so, I think that that's what this does. So thank you for the time and effort for staff and as well as reaching out to this consulting firm to walk us through this process.
Thank you so much. Council members Bordered, Palmer, and myself, as of yesterday, I found out, have a conflict, so we won't be commenting on this, although I'm sure we'd like to. So thank you for the presentation today.
Thank you.
Well, now I'll hand it back over to Bradley.
All right. Don't worry, Jennifer. I'm not going to talk about a red oak tree or a Chinese pistache tree.
Hey, you know what though, Bradley? I was with you because these are trees that we plant that we might not sit under.
That's right.
Okay, I was with you.
I didn't want y'all to worry that I was resigning or something, so I didn't say that. But I decided not to.
Okay, I got you.
So I hope to sit under the tree someday. Our next work session is the discussion of a strategic communications audit, a final report. And we have, I believe Ashley Nystrom is going to, yeah, there she is, our chief of staff and currently serving for the next few days as interim municipal information director, joining us at the table, as well as Tom Bryson and Renee Tejas representing Cooksey Communications. Council will likely recall that earlier this year, staff brought on the Cooksey team to help us really analyze our communication strategies and efforts and put together a set of action steps to really enhance our communications efforts. Their work has already started to find its way into our organization and be operationalized, and I feel really encouraged by the audit and how it will drive our strategies over the next couple of years. This audit report certainly is going to pair well with our next work session on the website as well when we hear from Mike Seawright, so there'll be a little bit of overlapping interests here. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you, Bradley. And we'll have Tom and Renee start us off. From the Cooksey team, it's been a pleasure working with them. We started with them back in April, and they've just been very professional and talented to work with. So they have for you today an overview of the full audit report, some of the key findings and recommendations.
Hello, I'm with Cooksey Communication, a DFW-based strategic communications firm working in the public and private sector for over 25 years. My name is Renee Tejas. I'm the Vice President of the public sector practice with the organization. I'm actually based in Austin, Texas, and have experience working as a television news political reporter, a press secretary with the New Mexico State Senate, 7 years with the city of Austin, working as the manager of media relations under then city manager Mark Ott, who has gone on to become the head of ICMA, and the director of communication for the mayor of Austin, as well as 6 years as the executive director of communication and engagement with the Austin Independent School District and their 130 schools and 80,000 students. And joining me today is Tom Bryson, a freelance consultant who was instrumental to this process and the collaboration that we had with Waco, a 31-year local government professional. He has been past president of the Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers and nationally through CMA. In February 2021, the city sought a strategic communications consultant to conduct an audit of the city's existing strategic communication materials and processes, and the intent was to generate a report offering a third-party candid review of the city's municipal information department structure, their staffing, their resources, their tools, their processes, and their outcomes. So how did we get to where we are now? Evaluation of current and quite ample communication-related operations, resources, and technology. The Cooksey team took several months to examine and evaluate the many communication programs and channels currently operated by the city of Waco. And through and part of that was 4 months weekly meetings that we had with both Brian Holt and Ashley Nordstrom, and we could not have done it without their input and their leadership. We interviewed key internal and external stakeholders. There was nearly 40 conversations with these stakeholders that have a vested interest in the success of Waco Communications. Members of this council participated in 40 to 90-minute individual stakeholder interviews for qualitative feedback, as well as 30 others did the same from external stakeholders, department directors, municipal information staff, and the executive team, including City Manager Ford. Conducting a community survey of residents' communication preferences was also done. This was translated into Spanish, and outreach was made to community groups serving diverse audiences in an effort to drive resident responses from as many segments of the community as possible. This was a key indicator of current levels of success and was open from late May through early August. The survey proved that overall satisfaction with quality and effectiveness of the city's communications was at 62% in the favorable rating, compared with Round Rock at 64%, Temple at 60%, Austin at 49%, and Georgetown at 42%. The national average is 46%. Benchmarking against peer and aspirational cities in Texas and beyond. These are in-depth interviews that we do with communities that are selected in partnership with staff. As a matter of comparison, the Cooksey team benchmarked the Waco municipal information against comparable cities, including Austin, Fort Worth, Temple, and 2 cities in other states, Tallahassee, Florida, and Tempe, Arizona. We posed a number of questions to each of these municipalities, including queries about the size of their department, the budget, social media sophistication, and more. And it should be noted that 2 of the groups, Tallahassee and Tempe, have centralized a formerly decentralized communication function to great success, meaning the decentralization has individual departmental PIOs serving and reporting to sometimes the actual centralized location. Also, we'd identified gaps and opportunities. It sometimes takes fresh eyes to really see what certain communication efforts are succeeding and where there are challenges. And as we will see from my colleague Tom in here just a second, we identified a number of gaps and opportunities. Developed quantifiable metrics. The detailed recommendation included evaluating each communications program, channel, and strategy, and offering recommendations that ultimately guide the future growth and direction of the department. Those detailed recommendations were divided in key areas of personnel, FTE positions, contract options, communication channels, policies, and procedures, and a review of the approval process, which you will hear more from Tom about.
Thank you, Renee. Mayor, members of the council, thank you so much for your time today and during this year. This has been a lengthy process, but a very good one. One that has been a real joy to participate in. I know personally, I did not have a personal tie to Waco. I am an LSU guy. Go Tigers. However, my wife does hold a doctorate from Baylor, so Waco does have a soft spot in our heart, so it was an extra pleasure for me to take part in this process. For those of us that have really been passionate about government communications through our careers, being able to take a good look at what other cities do is one of the things that make consulting worthwhile, to be honest with you. And one of the great things that we were able to determine in talking to the existing staff is that the municipal information staff that you have in place does very good work. They are passionate about what they do. That 62% approval rating, that's a good number. Obviously, you always want it to be a better number, but there's a good opportunity to grow that number from here. Obviously, they are stretched thin. Understaffing and some key vacancies have left them scrambling to keep up with the workload with very little time for comprehensive or content planning. A big recommendation was that communications and marketing functions should be centralized under the Municipal Information Department. This is not made lightly. We know that that's a big deal. That's a big ask. However, it centralizes the communications authority, promotes on-brand storytelling effectiveness, and in many of the models we've looked at, communications people that have been assigned to various departments can still be assigned to cover that department, if you will, as much like a reporter covering a beat might be. But the synergy and centralization of having them all reporting to one department has made a big difference in a lot of places. You do have some formal policies in place, specifically social media and media relations. They're solid, but they could use some updating. There are also some additional policies and procedures that we think you might want to take a hard look at, specifically crisis communications. We've all been in crisis mode for the last 2 years. Some of it has been making it up as we go. My last full year of employment for a municipality was 2020. So we sympathize with how that's been. But having some procedures in place based largely on what's been happening lately can go a long way to help staff in the future get through those situations. General communications process. How a story gets from point A to point B. Branding guidelines, photography and filming guidelines, those are the kind of policies we think the city may want to take a look at. Content planning is really key to any municipal information, municipal communications office's success. We recommend that a centralized content planning calendar of sorts be created that would be accessible by all stakeholders. In other words, everybody knows what's going on, or has access to what's going on and when it's going on. So Monica's team can go in there and schedule something that's coming up, and a department won't have to wonder when exactly that's going to be covered. There's going to be a central location that they could go to find that out. Campaigns can be forecast in advance, and other story ideas and deeper dives can be sketched out and scheduled. Your video staff does some really extraordinary work. They need help though, obviously. We recommend that the producer and supervisor positions be filled at the earliest opportunity. It's helpful if new hires for video positions be from a government background and adept at producing both longer form material for TV, but especially shorter form material for digital dissemination, social media, website, anything like that. I can speak from experience. Way back in the day, we used to produce material for the channel, and oh, by the way, let's throw it on that newfangled YouTube thing. The script is flipped 180 degrees today. Everything should be produced for digital, everything. most everything should be produced for digital, with the ability to put it on the channel as well. The recommended positions of digital editor and engagement specialist can really help expand the city's communications reach. If there's any hiring trend that we've seen lately in municipal governments, it's toward the addition of a digital editor to assume responsibility for all social, web, electronic news, anything that has a digital footprint, that individual takes responsibility for. And then, of course, an engagement specialist would be dedicated to reaching those underserved communities, concentrating on reaching underserved communities. For success in messaging, it's critical, of course, to reach those communities where they live, and having someone dedicated to that process can help that. I know a discussion on the website is coming up, and I'm actually kind of interested to see how that comes out. We believe that an overhaul of the website is a golden opportunity to convey a brand, to convey a new air of communications, a new paradigm for communications, if you will. Your existing website, as I'm sure you know, is been there for a while. I'll leave it at that. Obviously, a new website is a new look. It's a new projection of the city's digital front door, and maximizing that opportunity is something that I think is a golden opportunity for the city at this juncture. I would emphasize that many cities labor mightily over the transition from an old to a new site, and then once they flip the switch, okay, that's done. Really, that's just when the work is beginning. And keeping that work going forward, keeping that site dynamic, is something that demands attention. Maximizing internal and external partnerships help amplify messaging, much like we mentioned in the line on engagement specialist. Municipal information as a department or the city as an organization isn't an island. You operate in a diverse area with lots of municipal partners, both internal and external. And the department maximizing those partnerships only helps that flow of information and helps amplify those story ideas, and helps, in short, helps the city better tell Waco's story. The e-newsletter is a unique opportunity. We really think this is a real opportunity to leverage something that the community already considers to be a great asset and turn it into something even better. Resident survey respondents held up the e-newsletter as the highest rated of your city's communications channels. It could easily be leveraged to be one of the flagships with just some very few additions and improvements, and those are detailed in our full report. Social media. When social media began, those of us that were charged with trying to run herd on it quickly lost sight of that herd when lots of departments and individuals started signing up for all kinds of different channels, and that can get out of hand in a hurry, and in many places it did get out of hand in a hurry. We know that you have a lot of channels out there, and many of those, having more than 30 social media channels that we counted at the time, can really dilute the content. For example, I know there's, at least last time I looked, there was both a Twitter page for the CBB and for the Convention Center, when perhaps one would suffice. But having some consolidation there, some consolidation appears to have already taken place, which is a great step, but additional consolidation is necessary to draw on the strength of those larger channels, because your primary Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels for the city have a combined following of more than 65,000. That's a great audience, and especially when you have critical messaging to get out, it would help if people know exactly where to go without having to choose between a menu of social media channels to get there. A priority, we believe, needs to be placed on utilization of the PEG budget. PEG, of course, standing for Public Education and Government Access Programming. It is 1% of the gross revenues paid by cable providers to the city. They're specifically earmarked for capital investment in your government access programming. We understand that there's somewhere north of $1 million in your PEG account right now, not much of which has been spent in recent years. We heard from the video staff that they're very happy with their equipment as it sits, which is a great thing. However, these days, technology is constantly leapfrogging. There's always new equipment coming out, and there should really be a rotation schedule developed where components can be replaced on a life cycle basis and not until you have a catastrophic failure and suddenly you're off the air. Anything like that in the PEG fund can really help that. But again, it is earmarked by law to only be used for capital and equipment, can't be used for personnel or salaries. I do understand one interpretation, and I would urge you to rely on your in-house counsel, but one interpretation has been if there is an installation project of a major component or a new studio for that matter, the accompanying labor that accompanies that capital project can be included. But it's a fine line, and a legal opinion is certainly much better than mine. This next one, obviously, I know you've already made strides on, but the name municipal information is kind of dated. It's not one we've seen in any other sectors of city government, so communications and marketing, anything along that line lends a fresh air to what's going on. Professional associations, Renee was generous enough to mention that I had the privilege of leading both our state and national professional associations of local government communicators. It was my experience that those organizations are really critical to the success of many local government communicators. There are so many people around the country that can feel like an island. When we get together at both the state and the national levels, not only do we get to compare notes against each other of who's doing what, but the various awards programs, yes, the trophies are nice, but the real value there is being able to gauge your work against your peers and see what other people are doing. Steal all kind of great ideas, and that's a watchword of what we do with those associations. And I know every time I came back from a conference, I would have a notebook full of new ideas to try. And it's something that is not just something good to have, it's something really critical that we encourage you to have everyone in communications be a part of. Internal communications, this is something that a lot of cities, I will, if you will allow me a personal story very quickly, I worked my last 22 years of my 31 at the City of Farmers Branch. We had an internal survey of employees once upon a time that told us most internal services were fine, but communicating with employees from the city was couldn't be worse. And admittedly, we had very little in the way of internal communications in place. We immediately put together a team of key departments, communications, HR, IT, and a few others, including Parks and Rec. And actually, we opened the invitation to any department that wanted to be a part of it to create an internal communications committee. We made a lot of strides over the years. I know the city manager has a plan in place for internal communications. I say this only to emphasize that internal communications satisfaction from employees is not just a convenience, it's really a necessity. It can drive employee satisfaction and engagement in what you do. The bottom line, this is a department that has been in place for a long time. It has produced a lot of good work, and there are lots of great opportunities on the horizon. A refresh is in order. Hiring a new director, which you've already done, is a great step forward. Associated staff to go with that new director is going to go a long way. Greater attention to content planning and centralizing that content planning, as well as centralizing people that are involved in marketing and communications. Taking a critical evaluation of existing communications channels, and the full report details a little bit more critical evaluation of several of them. Sometimes things wear out over time, and it's okay to say it's time to shelve that and move on to something else. So that, of course, is your decision, but a critical evaluation to get to that point is in order. That centralization of communications and marketing functions and a new commitment to social media and digital engagement all translates to a concentration of the department being able to concentrate on telling Waco's story and not just delivering its news. It's important to note that an initial draft of these recommendations was delivered to Waco senior management back in August. They have been able to get a start on many of them, and to crystallize that, I'll give it back to Ashley.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Renee. for this overview and also for your work. Like I said at the beginning, it's been a pleasure working with the Cooksey Communications team. They've been very generous with their insight and advice throughout the process. If you'll permit me, I do have a few thank yous as well to share. Thank you to City Manager Ford for his support in moving this very important project forward, as well as to Assistant City Manager Holt, who was a co-sponsor on the project and provided his insight and assistance throughout. Thank you to you on the council, to our city staff, and to the members of the public who participated in the interviews and the survey. We couldn't be where we are today without that feedback. And then also, I just, at this point in time, would like to give a huge shout out and thank you to the entire municipal information team for putting up with me for the past 6 or so months. They're a talented group, very fun to work with, and I enjoyed getting to step behind the curtain with them this year. So want to take a moment just to talk about some of the things we've accomplished over the past few months. As we worked through the audit and review process, we knew there would be things that we could move on without waiting for the full report. So this is just a brief overview of some of the findings that we've already started working on. Monica was introduced at the beginning of the work session, but we have hired her as a new director, and as much as I've enjoyed being the interim, I am looking forward to her starting next week and seeing the talents and expertise that she's going to bring to the team and our city organization. We have also started the process on some of our suggested positions, particularly within our video and digital media team, as we are short-staffed there. Look forward to growing that team quickly so we can provide better coverage throughout the city so we can best tell Waco's story. It's been hinted at a few times throughout the process, and I'm sure you've seen it in our hiring process, but the Municipal Information Department will soon become officially the Communications and Marketing Department. We made the move toward this change when we opened the director position, and we began that executive level search so that we could best reflect at that time where we were going with the role and the vision for the department. And so one of my main goals in my role as the interim was to make sure that the future director and the communications and marketing team was set up for success, knowing that we would be looking to quickly implement the audit findings. So one of the key points there was to make sure that in the fiscal year 2022 budget that they would have the funds they need. So thank you to council for generously setting forth a budget increase for this team. In FY22, I believe that the increase gives them room to grow their team, as well as to quickly implement some of the program enhancements and improvements that were recommended in the audit. You will also see some projects come forward to help us effectively utilize our PEG fund. Money won't go unspent there as well. And then finally, as we went through the audit and took a deep dive into our analytics, we have begun a refresh and evaluation of some of our existing programming. You will have seen City Beat take on a new look and a new feel, as well as our print newsletter, which was one of our top-rated communications tools as well, moved to a full-color production. We've gotten good feedback there as well. And then we have begun to take a look at some of our longer-standing programs, particularly the long-format ones that, frankly, the viewership just wasn't supporting for the time and effort that it took to produce those. They won't go away. We will continue to bring more and better information to the public, but it may be in a refreshed format, as was mentioned. So as we move forward, I'm very excited for this team and for the many opportunities that are in front of us. I won't go away completely. They'll still have me as a resource. But you'll see the communications and marketing team continue to implement this full report as we move forward with the findings.
Thank you, guys. Questions and comments?
So thank you so much, Ashley, for standing in the gap in the time. Thank you to the Cooksey team. Renee, as you were listing your extensive resume, I was like, oh, he doesn't know much about working with the crazy folks in municipal government at all. But what we know about this council is that communication is a priority for us in all forms. We need to make sure that there are no wrong doors, that our constituents and our citizens, you know, walk and look to the city of Waco for the information in whatever form that they do, and that it's available to them seamlessly. multiple languages and multiple practices, we've evolved in how we do things. Now, I know, don't call me on the year, but when we started our city channel, it was one of the first in the state, if I'm correct, right? And so, you know, we've been doing communications for a long time, but as everything changes and evolves, we must also. So I'm super excited about how we grow telling our story. Personally, there have been times that Waco's narrative has been told for them. And I think that now we take ownership of our city and its message and its narrative. And the team who has done this job, you know, and worked in our process as we grow have done a fantastic job. So, you know, never let it be said that the work that has already been done has not been appreciated, because it has. I know every time we're somewhere, there's someone there with us. So I know how hard they work and the amazing content that has been on our channel. But as things grow, things grow. And so this is just a wonderful opportunity to refresh, to show who we are, and take responsibility for our narrative and really tell our own story. Y'all, I'm super excited about all the changes, the website especially, God bless. But I think that all the ways that we tell our story and make our information available is important, and where we meet people where they are. I certainly look forward to the mayor's personal TikTok channel that will be established.
Second.
That will be established.
That was the dance, that was the pre-dance.
TikTok Tuesdays
only
is
one
a
you're
thing,
getting.
don't worry about it. But, you know, the information that may not be valid
Hanukkah's
right
not
now.
happening.
We'll talk later, don't worry about it. But the information that we have can go to other venues. You know, it may not be on the city channel, but it may live on the YouTube channel, because that's important, and their audience is for those things, and we tell them how to get there, because the information is good. And it's the one thing about history, it's not going away. So we honor it and we own it. So I'm gonna shut up because communications is my jam, but I'm really excited about this part. So thank you.
I'll take the baton as a fellow communications guru up here. When I'm not on this dais, I work for a digital media and marketing firm, so all of this is really exciting to me to hear some of the very big picture moves that we're making, and then some of the specific changes, like updating the name of our department, bringing on new staff, bringing on folks that are going to do some of the digital editing pieces. To echo what Councilwoman Barefield said, we have such an incredibly diverse city, and sometimes the stories that we're telling, especially the stories that are being told of Waco outside of our community, are not reflective of that. They are very rooted in a white, upper middle class existence that is not reflective of our overwhelmingly working and middle class BIPOC community. And so I want to echo that we want to see us tell stories that are centering the lives of the multiplicity of experiences of our neighbors, and we want that to be consistently bilingual in English and in Spanish. That is a massive priority of us, and we recognize that as a massive undertaking. It's exciting to see. We're also working on the modernization of our airport, and this feels pretty similar. Of this served us up to a time, and now we get to move boldly into the 21st century, and we get to take advantage of all the things that a social media platform like Instagram has to offer. How do we maximize Reels and IGTVs? How do we make, I think some of the things that our municipal information department has done incredibly well is creating compelling content that goes viral, whether it is Josh dressed up during a blood drive in his suit, or we're doing a fun PSA, and I like the idea of continuing to create content that is shareable and also has depth and meaning and communicates value. A couple of other questions that I have, you might have already mentioned this, but when will we see the full report?
We're ready to provide it to the council in the next week or two. Yeah.
Okay. We look forward to reading that, City Manager Ford. The other piece that I feel like a lot of what I heard in y'all's presentation, which was phenomenal, was a lot of process oriented, and I didn't feel like I heard as much content oriented of what are some of the specifics that you are encouraging us to move in the direction of. So curious if y'all have input that you could provide there.
I think there's so much that can be done there. It depends a lot on really the direction that Monica and her team get from city management and in turn from council going forward. In a lot of cities these days, it's a lot of the small stories that haven't traditionally been getting out there that a lot of folks are finding compelling. In my own experience, and this is really what happens in so many places, they get so involved in running from point A to point B. There's not a lot of time to develop those kind of things, which is why we hope these recommendations will help open those doors.
Thank you.
Holmes here. Thanks, great report. The first thing I want to say is that 14 to-dos, takeaways, which I think is great. And I just want the mayor to note that our new marketing director hasn't run out of the building screaming yet.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff to do here, and there's a lot of well put together concepts on what directions we can go. And Monica, I hope you're up to the challenge. I know you've got council support on addressing these. It's fascinating to me, just the plethora of different channels that we have, website, snail mail, newsletters, email, Facebook, and Twitter, TikTok, the mayor's TikTok, digital, all this stuff. And just keeping up. The last time we've kind of taken a deep dive on where this is going, we haven't really done it. And on top of that, you have a lot of different city departments that want to and need to communicate their message and their initiatives, and how we just need to take a look at how that converges and how that kind of a single source deal and how we manage all that. So this is really enlightening, and I'm not the guru of the council on communications, but a really concise and easy to understand presentation. So thanks guys. And again, Monica, appreciate you being here.
I just want to say thank you again also for the report, and I echo my council members' remarks and comments. The only thing that I would say about our channel is I thoroughly enjoyed the projects of them going out, the staff going out and talking to our constituents about their personal way of life and how they grew up here in Waco and what they did when they came to Waco, how they started their business, if that's what they were after, or just like I enjoyed so much Mr. De Leon's interview that Mark and Larry did. He was so personal, and there's a lot of things that I have learned. I thought I knew a lot about my city, born and raised here, but I learned a lot from hearing a lot of the interviews on that channel about Waco and how these folks came, started their business, or just lived their life in Waco. And I just say that because I don't want that to ever go away. I think that's something everybody likes to see, how Waco was started, how a neighborhood was started, how a business was started here in Waco. So my opinion is I would like to emphasize that we continue to do that and more of it if possible.
If I may, that's a continuation of those kind of small stories that we're talking about, getting out there and meeting people where they are, where they live, and being able to convey that. So I completely concur.
I'd like to join in the chorus of gratitude for Ashley's work, for the Cooksey's team's work, and our current, I suppose, still municipal information employees who have been great to work with. I know on council we get to interact with them a lot, and I do think the 62% approval rating, essentially, of our current communications work but through that survey is not to be underestimated. I think that's a profound statement of the good work that we're doing. But I also agree that, a pivot is needed. I'm no communications guru either. I still use a fax machine semi-regularly, as I've described to the Cooksey team before, so a little behind older phones, that sort of thing. But I do look forward to new ways of doing communications, and I defer, of course, to the expertise of the consultants and the members of council that do this for a living. So I'm looking forward to it, and I welcome our new director as well. I think we've got exciting new opportunities ahead for communication. So thank you all.
I'm sure our team is really going to look forward to reading the chapter on how to send faxes well. Sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in relation to many of the comments that we've heard today. It feels like, and Tom and I are able to balance each other out because he has a tremendous grasp of mid-city and smaller city kind of practice, and me having worked and been involved with the organizations I've been involved with. Waco, you guys are growing and really on the cusp, and what you find yourself in a position, or that I have found Waco to be in a position as far as engagement and communication. As you get slightly larger than Waco, the best practice is to kind of break out an engagement staff person and a communications staff person. The engagement having, following best practices by IAPT, International Association of Public Participation, and hearing those stories you spoke of, Councilmember Rodriguez, and bringing them back to the comm team to craft, but that person who serves as a liaison to the stakeholders, and then the solid communication staff that you have already in place. And so the next step in the recommendation in the report is to actually have an engagement coordinator to be able to do that. You would be ahead of cities your size, but being able to follow best practice for cities that are larger than yours.
Well, I think you can tell this council cares about the subject based on the feedback and good questions that were presented today. I've always said that the first thing is to do the best right thing here in the four walls of City Hall, and then the next challenge is to communicate it well to our constituents. And as Councilmember Barefield said earlier, I do think that this is we're starting to see ourselves as the shortest member of the varsity basketball team here in Texas, and I think our vision is great. We want to seize the moment that we're in right now and accelerate what is growing, the Waco opportunity that is in the air in Waco, and I think communicating that opportunity to our residents strategically and meeting them where they are is fundamental in us achieving our goals. You've heard that said a lot, I think, from this council, and this is the staff. I think I'm excited to see this department continue to work to meet people where they are creatively and strategically, and I know that we'll get there. And just thinking through that, you emphasized the importance of internal communications, and I think that's important from an operations perspective, but I also think it bleeds into external communications, I would assume, thinking that when there's good internal communications, that means neighborhood association leadership is picking that up and able to then go externally communicate it. And I think that there's a lot of external communications opportunities, but it takes that internal communications being known or being achieved well. I really support the move of marketing over to communications. That's something that has a big priority of mine, and also appreciate the emphasis on crisis communication and look forward to seeing how we continue to adopt good strategies around both of those two things. I appreciate everything Councilmember Rodriguez said about storytelling and the power of that, and I think that I like that you brought up, not just telling the news, but telling the city's story. And that might be one question I had is tell us a little bit, what is the difference between telling the news and telling a story? And how do you, any tips that would be good to be said right now on how to tell, what is storytelling when it comes to municipality?
I think when it's done in its best form, it's how does that news affect or impact the individuals you're trying to speak to? And so if you are able to show that in a representative fashion and how a policy change or the history even of an individual has influenced or impacted both how Waco is growing, but how the policy change may look for a certain individual, if you're able to tell that story through your different platforms, that is one way that you're able to create broader appeal and allow those that are viewing the platform to more personally connect with what is happening.
And if I may, delivering the news is when is trash going to be picked up 4th of July week? what are special hours around holidays, things of that, which is important, certainly important. But much of what Renee just said is perfectly in line with telling the city's story. Telling the city's story today, telling the city's story yesterday. Historical information cannot be overestimated. There's so much about history in Texas in particular, and Waco specifically, that you have that needs to be celebrated. And again, back to the small stories, the people that make up the city in all sectors of the community and what they do and how they do it really helps inform everyone.
Sure. Yep. I think that's something that I look forward to kind of seeing our department evolve on and understand well how to tell stories. And I think we have a great legacy and history of that, so that doesn't mean to say that we don't have that legacy, but I think continuing to sharpen how we tell the holistic big picture story of the city and specific stories of people is going to be important. At some point, I think that we really like to press in even deeper into like a branding exercise at the city to try to understand what is our brand, what is our DNA, right. And really put some time and energy into that subject matter. I don't know if you have any thoughts around how to best incorporate that into this work when it comes about, or any subject around that, or this ideas around a good implementation of that. Does that make sense, that question?
Sure. So many people equate brand to a logo, and of course it's
That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. If you had to walk up to 10 people today and ask what Waco's brand was, you might get 10 different answers. Mm-hmm. And to a degree, all of them may have some truth going on there. So a visioning exercise, if you will, to try to drill down to see what the commonalities are there. Sometimes that takes some external eyes, and not a sales pitch or anything, but sometimes that takes somebody that isn't familiar with what's going on in the community to be able to help see that, help identify that, and pull that out. The processes of branding I've been involved with in the past can be, and probably should be, a little considerable. That's not to say overly lengthy, but you want to be comprehensive in what you're looking at and how you're doing it. Thoughts?
Yeah, and I also think the small facilitated groups from your community are going to benefit. When I led a branding initiative for the Austin Independent School District, that included bringing in parents that were compensated to the smallest degree so that it's more equitable, so that those that are able to take the 2 hours are really able to take the 2 hours, and you're not just hearing from folks that could afford to take the 2 hours, and place the group together to come to a combined consensus when they make the determinations. And I'm talking about small groups that are from diversified backgrounds that need to come together to identify within that small group what they would name the brand of Waco to be.
Well, I think that's something that we'll continue to move towards, is going through an exercise that having community conversations with all sectors of our community to really define who we are. Because like you said, I think you ask 10 people or 6 council members what that is, and I think there would be a lot of overlap, but I think that there's a robust community discussion to be had to ensure we capture perspectives, to really gel and go deep on like who is Waco, and that's for us the DNA of our own residents and the identity that we carry. But then I think there's also external benefit as we're trying to grow our economy and looking at tourism issues as well. So that's something that I see in our future, and think that that'll be a part of some of the communication aspects that we implement out of this study, hopefully. And if you got any more tips with our team to share regarding something like that, just share it with staff. So with that, thanks so much to Cooksey. I've heard really great things from you guys, from our staff who deals with consultants more in depth than we do on a regular basis, that y'all have gotten really high marks. And so thank you for your work. And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to really thank our entire comms team, Ashley Nystrom, who have served as interim with such excellence. So thank you for your really diligent work in a really tumultuous few months. here at the city. A lot going on, some challenging, some really fun, but still very important to communicate. So thank you to Ashley. And look forward to the days ahead. Yep, let's take it on.
And Mayor, just as a postscript, if I may, and I probably should have said so right off the top, but just to echo that, this would not have been possible without the solid and steadfast work that Ashley and Ryan Holt gave us throughout the process. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ashley and Ryan. Welcome to our team, and thank you so much for your being here today. Thanks, guys. And why don't we take, it is 5 o'clock, and I think we have one more discussion. Do y'all, council want a break? Staff want a break? Need a head nod if you do.
Keep it going,
All right, we'll keep going.
All right.
One more presentation.
Right on schedule, Jennifer. Did you notice that? Our next work session is a discussion of the city's website content management system and website redesign project. We're joined at the table by Mike Seawright, our Chief Information Officer. In today's presentation, he's going to update the council and public on the activities that staff's been working on to create a new website for the city of Waco. And that sounds like one simple phrase, to create a new website, but it's an unbelievable undertaking that really takes numerous staff members you're going to hear about in a few minutes, and literally hundreds of hours of staff time. The city has partnered up with a group called Open Cities to create the new website, and it'll continue to be a major project for us between now and our go-live date later in the summer of 2022. Mike?
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate this opportunity to give you a quick update on our website redesign project. I'd also like to thank you for your investment in this initiative as we look to modernize and change our website strategy and how we work with our citizens online. This is our core project team for the website redesign project. We also have a content publisher, our power user group, as well. Our goal here is to make sure we include every department at the city and make sure that everyone is involved in the process as we move this forward. One thing that Cooksey said earlier that is so true, once we get closer to go live, we definitely want to design and develop a website governance council to keep the momentum going forward, make sure we're upgrading, make sure we're modernizing, we're changing with the times, and enabling new solutions and things like that. So something that we've got in front of us and something that we will make sure we put together as we move forward. As we started the project, the core team put together these goals. I'm a firm believer that IT goals should be fluid, and the planning process should be fluid as well. And so these goals will change as well as we move this project forward. The top item there, to modernize and translate our business processes to the web, that'll be at the forefront of everything we do. Second item there is just to make sure that the user experience on your mobile device is just as positive as on your 32-inch monitor at your house. A new information architecture. That's really a new content sitemap to make sure we're designing that sitemap based on what our residents' needs are, and that they don't get lost within our website. Equity, accessibility, and transparency. You could almost put that as the top item there as well. That's so important as we move this forward. And then empowering our internal stakeholders is also super critical as we move this forward, just to make sure that departments have the ability to modify their website presence as we move this forward. We had to make sure we included this within the PowerPoint. They had the project timeline. We're missing quite a few milestones in here. Couldn't get them all on one screen. A couple things to highlight here. The investments that you made includes a tremendous amount of training for our users. I'm excited about that. Not just admin training, but user training. We also have a digital services academy, which will teach our departments how to write for the web. And so we're excited about that as well. Open Cities and Bloomworks, a contractor within this project, they're a serious firm and they've done a lot of great work, and so we're excited to see what they can bring to the table. Another item on this list here is the beta launch. We did not have to do that as part of this project. I felt it was important that we included it. This will be a major change for our community, And once we enable this website, we want to make sure that people know what it looks like, know what it acts like, know what the navigation looks like as we move that forward. This is a bulk of a lot of what we've been doing up to this point, collecting analytics from our existing website, sharing that information with Open Cities, pulling together all of our reports, all of our internal and external feedback, and sharing that with Open Cities. They will use that information to help us design our website, as well as design the information architecture for this new design. One aspect of this project that we included was to enable a resident website experience survey. And that's definitely something that we want to continue. We don't want to just one and done it. We want to make sure that we continue to release surveys and get feedback that we can act on from our residents. We had around 140 responses. Left that out for about 4 weeks. And again, we will continue that effort as we move that forward. Last week we had an outstanding meeting with Open Cities, and they started to show us some of the tools that they will leverage as they design our content for the website. They use an application called TreeJack, which will take the guesswork out of designing the content for our website so that there's logic and research behind what we do, and we're not just guessing at what link should be on the front page, what link should be on the second click. And the idea there is to make sure and ensure that our users do not get lost on our website. User personas, the next 3 slides, this will outline hypothetical examples of user personas. User personas are essentially made-up users that represent the various types of people that might visit our website. Personas will allow us to experience our website through the eyes of another person, which will help us stay focused on the user experience and our customers. Here's another popular user persona example. And as you can see, these personas provide great information for us to consider as we design the information architecture for the new site. And as we consider the background for our potential users and what motivates them to visit our website. In this last example, you can see that we are trying to focus on the needs of our residents in meaningful ways. We have to ensure that we are enabling a site that's easy to use and 100% focused on customer service for everyone we serve. For me, putting the City of Waco resident first will be a major focus of our design process and ensuring that we are thinking of our diverse community as we develop these personas. A digital outreach program is something that Open Cities will work with us on. Again, we want to make sure that we're communicating this change out to our community, as well as our internal departments as well. I think this is so important. Our design process, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, starts this week. I'm super excited about that. And as soon as we start seeing some examples of what this design might look like, we'll make sure we share that out with everyone possible. Alongside of Open Cities, members of our Waco core team evaluated every page on the existing site and made a conscious decision of whether to archive, improve, or migrate existing website content. We have identified required content that will move to the new site. However, the content that is migrated will be within the new design and with improved navigation and new website design standards. We have completed this initial round of content review and plan to keep a close eye on what we migrate, what needs to be improved, and what is archived. As we finalize the content migration process, we will develop an executive summary of migrated content. In addition, we will make sure we share the new information architecture strategy, what I refer to as the content sitemap strategy, which will outline all of our links on the new website and how these links are organized to deliver a positive user experience for our customers. Again, the design process starts next week. I'm very excited about that. We have a big group that will be in 2 different workshops. And as we get examples of what this will look like, we will share those out and we will get everyone's feedback and make adjustments as needed. Part of our investment includes a tremendous amount of training for our departments and power users. Making sure our internal teams and power users are trained is critical for project success. I am very excited to enable a better set of tools for our departments to manage the City of Waco website and shift to a task-driven website that will allow our visitors, businesses, and residents to do business with the City of Waco online 24/7, 365. To accomplish this, we need to make sure all of our internal teams are trained and comfortable using these new tools. And with that, I'll take questions.
Questions or comments?
Mike, considered a power user.
Our users in the departments, like our admins,
Okay.
and our users that will modify content within the website.
Mike, this was so exciting, and the timing of this is so perfect to have the reframing of how we're doing comms and the way we're telling stories and the way we're maximizing that in tandem with the website. I love hearing with the philosophy of the communications with the very technical subject matter expertise you are providing the city in building out the information architecture and building capacity among our staff with doing all of these trainings and thinking through at the granular level what needs to be migrated, what needs to be updated. It's really exciting to know that there's just such a high level of thoughtfulness in every element that's going to be a part of this website, which I think will drastically improve our ability to serve our residents and residents' ability to be empowered to find the information they need in real time. One of the things that I also really appreciated was the incredible focus on equity. So thank you for centering that. Thank you for creating user profiles that are reflective of the wide range of technical abilities and access to varying information and what platforms folks are on. This is just one of my favorite presentations I've seen all year. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Can you talk to me a little bit more? Thank you. The presentation is awesome. I've told you before, I think the vision that has been cast on how we integrate who we are and where we want to go into our information systems has found a great home with you at the helm, and so I appreciate that. Talk to me. I'm really interested in this website governance council because I think that is how we avoid being stagnation. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because it's someone that's looking at it, and I don't know who those people are, but I'm really excited to hear more about what that's going to look like, because I think that will give us all the opportunity to remain fresh. And, you know, regardless of how council turnovers happen and communication, the impetus on communication may change. You know, having a group in place for this purpose, I think will continue to keep us where we need to be.
Absolutely. Earlier, you said something during the Cooksey report. I think you said advance and enhance. I love that. I'm going to use that sometime. And so, you know, I think that we have to take that same mindset in regards to this. And I'm definitely going to work with my ACM and Bradley to set something up official around website governance, to make it an official committee where we continue to focus on the web in general. And the web involves a lot. You know, we just rolled out an app. This new site's going to have a lot of different tools to communicate with our residents and enable features that can really make a difference for our residents to communicate at 2 a.m. if they want to, via a fax machine if they want to, or different avenues. I think that we need to keep that in front of us. And so absolutely, that's my thought, is that we formalize it. We come up with new goals every year. We constantly look at other cities, aspirational cities, what they said earlier. I think that's so key. Open Cities and Bloomworks, I've been very impressed with them. And so keeping engaged with those folks as well, to make sure that we're just not keeping it in-house, but we're looking outward as well, and keeping experts engaged through the process. Hope that answered that.
Yes, thank you.
Questions, comments? I echo, this is a great presentation. I think that I'm looking forward to seeing us continue to move down the road on this, and know that the ability to strategically communicate is, again, a high value for our residents and businesses here locally in this council. So thanks so much, Mike. Great work.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll request a scheduling for future agenda items.
Yes, Mayor, in light of all of these wonderful conversations about communications, I would love for our city manager's office to provide us maybe either in an informal report or a work session on our language equity plan. So I'm thinking about this from a couple of different angles. How do we what's our plan and timeline in place for creating a fully bilingual digital and print media plan? And then I was talking with some colleagues in other cities this weekend, and their departments, when they move to fully bilingual, have a department-specific internal and external comms plan. So how do we communicate out to residents that speak Spanish, and how do Spanish residents communicate in to us with their needs? So would love for that to be something for staff to consider and provide to us.
Sounds good.
Other future agenda items. All right. With that, we will now recess the work session and reconvene regular session for executive session as read into the record by Assistant City Secretary at 5:16 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. 1, real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072. 2, economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. And 3, personnel, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074, discussion of city secretary hiring process. We are now in executive session at 5:18 p.m.